The text message lit up my phone screen at exactly 4:15 p.m. on a Tuesday, carrying a weight that completely shattered the quiet of my afternoon. It read, "Don't come to the anniversary dinner this weekend. The guest list is final, and Chloe's parents need your table for their friends." I sat at my kitchen island staring at the glowing words. I am Patricia Collins, a 64-year-old widow, and Mark is my only son. For the past 5 years, ever since he married Chloe, I had slowly been pushed to the margins of his life. I was the emergency babysitter, the silent checkbook, the background character expected to nod and smile while Chloe directed the show. I had personally paid the $5,000 deposit for this extravagant 5-year vow renewal dinner they were throwing at a downtown hotel. Yet here was my unceremonious dismissal. No apology, no phone call, just a sterile text message treating me like a seating chart error. I didn't cry. Years ago, when my husband passed, I spent all my tears. Now I operate on logic. I read the message a second time, processing the sheer audacity of it. They wanted my money, but they didn't want my presence. To Chloe, I was just Mark's boring, dowdy mother who worked some dull clerical job for the government. She was obsessed with status, constantly networking, and I simply didn't fit her aesthetic. I picked up my phone and typed a single, perfectly punctuated reply, "Understood." I didn't ask why. I didn't demand an explanation or write a paragraph about how much it hurt. I simply set the phone down, walked into my bedroom, and picked up my security badge for the night shift. To my son and daughter-in-law, I was a paper pusher. They had never bothered to ask what I actually did since I took the job 3 years ago. If they had, they would know I am the senior historical advisor for the executive residence at the White House. But tonight, I had a different kind of business to handle first. Before leaving for my shift, I opened my laptop and logged directly into my secure banking portal. Chloe and Mark had kept my credit card on file with the catering company to cover the remaining $10,000 balance for their lavish party, which was scheduled to be automatically charged on Thursday morning. They assumed my silence meant compliance. They assumed I would just swallow the disrespect and foot the bill anyway, as I had done so many times in the past, to keep the peace. I clicked on the card management tab, navigated to the active numbers, and pressed Cancel Card. A prompt asked for a reason. I selected Lost, Stolen, and confirmed. Just like that, the financial umbilical cord was severed. I didn't send a warning text. I didn't feel a shred of guilt. You don't get to lock the door in my face while keeping your hand in my pocket. After closing the laptop, I drove through the evening traffic toward Pennsylvania Avenue. The tension in my shoulders began to dissolve the moment I passed through the security gates. The Secret Service agents nodded. "Good evening, Mrs. Collins." The guard at the booth greeted me warmly. I walked the familiar polished corridors of the executive residence, breathing in the scent of floor wax and old paper. My job involves authenticating, preserving, and curating the historical artifacts used in state functions. I work alongside the chief usher and advise the First Lady's team on protocol involving historical pieces. It is a position of immense trust requiring a top-secret clearance. I spent the evening in the archives carefully cataloging a set of Lincoln-era porcelain needed for an upcoming diplomatic summit. My phone remained silent in my purse. Mark didn't check on me. He didn't call to soften the blow. He was likely relieved that I hadn't put up a fight. I focused on the delicate gold trim of the teacup in my hands, appreciating the quiet dignity of my environment. Tomorrow, a highly anticipated issue of a major political magazine was hitting the newsstands, and I had a feeling the quiet was about to break. Wednesday morning arrived with the crisp efficiency of a routine. I was back at my desk reviewing seating charts for a foreign dignitary's visit when my colleague David walked in holding a glossy copy of Washington Insider. It's the kind of high-profile political weekly that covers the Capitol the way tabloids cover celebrities. "You look fantastic in this." Patricia David smiled, tossing the magazine onto my desk. I opened it to the centerfold. There was a massive 2-page spread detailing a recent, highly exclusive state dinner. The photograph was candid, but striking. In the center, standing beside the First Lady and the Chief of Staff, was me. I was wearing my tailored navy suit, pointing toward a historical display, clearly directing the room. Below the photo, in bold print, read the caption, "Patricia Collins, Senior Historical Advisor, holding court, before the French delegation arrives." I looked at the image, feeling a quiet sense of pride. I had never hidden my job from my family. I simply never elaborated because they never asked. Whenever I mentioned working at the White House, Chloe would roll her eyes and change the subject to her mid-level corporate marketing job. She thought I sorted mail. I knew for a fact that Chloe's boss, a man she desperately tried to impress, was a political junkie who kept Washington Insider on the coffee table in their corporate lobby. I closed the magazine, thanked David, and went back to my work. The day passed smoothly. I left the grounds at 5, drove home, and made myself a simple dinner of grilled salmon and asparagus. I was just sitting down in my living room with a cup of chamomile tea when my phone began to vibrate violently against the glass coffee table. The caller ID flashed Mark's name. I let it ring 3 times before calmly swiping the green button and lifting it to my ear. "Hello, Mark? How could you do this to our family?" Mark's voice was shaking. It wasn't anger. It was pure, unadulterated panic. I took a slow sip of my tea, letting the silence stretch just long enough to make him uncomfortable. "Do what exactly I asked," keeping my tone perfectly level. "Don't play games, Mom," he practically yelled. Chloe's boss just pulled her into a meeting. He had a copy of Washington Insider on his desk. He pointed right at the centerfold and asked if that was her mother-in-law. Chloe looked like a complete idiot because she told everyone at her firm, "You were a retired file clerk." I set my mug down. I never told Chloe I was a file clerk. I told her I worked for the executive residence. If she chose to invent a narrative that made her feel superior, that is her problem, not mine. "You embarrassed her," Mark stammered, clearly pacing his living room. "Her boss is obsessed with White House history. He practically worships the people who run those events. She's been trying to get a promotion for 6 months, and now she looks like a liar who doesn't even know her own family." Again, Mark. This sounds like a Chloe problem. I felt a strange sense of detachment. For years, I had bent over backward to accommodate their fragile egos, shrinking myself so they could feel big. "Mom, you have to fix this." He pleaded, his voice dropping into that familiar, helpless whine he always used when he wanted me to clean up his messes. "You need to call her boss. Or get us a private tour. Something to make Chloe look good. She is furious." Before I could even formulate a response to that ridiculous demand, there was a scuffling sound on the line. The phone was clearly snatched away, and Chloe's sharp, breathless voice pierced my ear. "Patricia. Are you there?" "I'm here, Chloe," I replied, shifting comfortably into my armchair. "You did this on purpose," she accused, her voice dripping with venom. "You knew that magazine was coming out and you deliberately hid it from us so I would look stupid in front of the partners." "I don't control the publishing schedule of national magazines," I answered flatly. "And I didn't hide anything. You just never cared enough to ask." Whatever, she snapped. "Here is what we are going to do. You are going to arrange a VIP West Wing tour for my boss and his wife. You're going to give me the passes, and I am going to present them to him tomorrow. It's the only way to salvage my reputation." I actually laughed. It was a short, dry sound that surprised even me. "No, Chloe, I will not be doing that." "What do you mean, no? You owe me this? You've completely ruined my week right before my vow renewal." "The vow renewal I am no longer invited to," I reminded her softly. The one where the guest list is final. I think you have enough on your plate without worrying about VIP tours. Don't be petty, she started. I hung up. I didn't slam the phone. I just ended the call. It felt incredibly liberating. My heart was beating a steady, calm rhythm. I walked over to the front door, popped off the plastic cover of the electronic keypad lock I had installed last year, and pressed the reset button. I deleted Mark's access code. He had a habit of dropping in whenever he needed to grab something from the boxes they stored in my spare room. That era was officially over. I walked down the hall to the guest room. The closet was packed with Chloe's out-of-season clothes and Mark's old college electronics. I grabbed a stack of heavy-duty garbage bags and started packing their things. If I wasn't family enough to sit at their table, my house was no longer a free storage facility. At 8 o'clock the next morning, I was sitting on my porch with my coffee when Mark's SUV pulled into my driveway. He practically jumped out of the car looking exhausted, his tie slightly askew. He marched up the steps and reached for the keypad on the front door. He punched in his code. The lock buzzed an angry red. He tried again. Red! He turned to look at me, confusion replacing the frustration on his face. Mom, did you change the code? I did. I confirmed, taking a sip of my coffee. I didn't stand up. I didn't offer him a seat. He ran a hand over his face. Look, I don't have time for this passive-aggressive stuff. The caterer just called me. They tried to run the final payment for the dinner, and your card was declined. You need to call your bank right now and clear the fraud alert. I looked at him, studying the lines of stress around his eyes. He genuinely believed I was just having a minor tantrum. There is no fraud alert, Mark. I canceled the card. He froze his hand, dropping to his side. You what? I canceled it? I repeated slowly. You sent me a text telling me not to come to the party. I accepted your decision. But I certainly am not going to pay $10,000 for a dinner I am explicitly banned from attending. Are you insane? Mark yelled, stepping closer. The party is on Saturday. If we don't pay the caterer by noon today, they cancel the entire event. We lose the venue. We lose everything. That sounds like a serious problem. I agreed calmly. But it's not my problem. Mom Chloe's parents paid for the photographer and the band. We don't have the cash for the venue. You promised to cover it. I promised to host my son's anniversary dinner, I corrected him. But according to you, there is no room for me. So my funds are no longer available. Before Mark could argue further, the passenger door of the SUV opened. Chloe stepped out, marching up the driveway in her expensive heels. She put on a forced, brittle smile as she approached the porch. Patricia. She cooed, her tone entirely different from the venomous screech on the phone last night. Mark is just stressed. We both are. The planning has been a nightmare. The text was a misunderstanding. My parents had unexpected out-of-town guests, and we just panicked about seating. Of course you're invited. I observed her. The fake sweetness was almost insulting. They didn't want me there. They wanted my credit card. It's too late, Chloe, I replied, resting my coffee mug on the small table beside me. The card is canceled. The money is staying in my account. Her fake smile vanished instantly, her eyes narrowing. You can't do this. My boss is coming to this dinner. Half my firm is coming. You are going to humiliate us. You humiliated yourselves, I corrected her. I stood up, walked to the front door, and opened it. I didn't invite them inside. Instead, I reached into the hallway and dragged out 2 heavy, taped-up boxes. I pushed them across the porch toward Mark's feet. What is this? Mark asked, staring at the boxes. Your things, I stated. I cleared out the guest room last night. I'll be converting it into a home office. There are 4 more boxes inside. You can load these into your car now, and I'll bring the rest out. Chloe stared at me, mouth agape. You're kicking our stuff out over a seating chart. I am setting my house in order, I told her. I am no longer your storage unit, your bank, or your secret. to keep hidden. If you want a luxury party, you will pay for it yourselves. Now please take your boxes. Mark looked completely defeated. He stared at the boxes, then at me. Mom, please. We don't have 10 grand lying around. If you don't pay this, we have to cancel the hotel. We'll have to move it somewhere cheap. Chloe will be devastated. Then she should have treated her benefactor with a little more respect, I said smoothly. It's your fault for not telling us who you really were. Chloe snapped her true colors, flaring up again. If we knew you were an executive advisor, we would have put you at the head table. That was the truest thing she had ever said. She only valued me when she realized my status could benefit her. Thank you for being honest, Chloe, I murmured. But my worth isn't dictated by a magazine spread. I am the same mother who raised Mark, the same woman who paid your deposit. If that wasn't enough for the head table, then my job title shouldn't change anything. I brought out the remaining boxes, stacking them near the steps. Mark silently picked one up and carried it to his car. He knew when he had lost. Chloe stood frozen on the lawn, her phone buzzing constantly, probably the caterer waiting for a valid card. You're really going to ruin my day, she hissed. Have a wonderful anniversary, Chloe, I replied, stepping back inside. I closed the front door, locked it, and walked back to my kitchen. The house was blissfully quiet. There was no screaming, no legal threats, no dramatic showdowns, just a simple, unmovable boundary. I poured myself a second cup of coffee. The crushing weight of always trying to please them, of always trying to buy my way into my own family's affection, was gone. I felt lighter than I had in years. Saturday arrived with a beautiful, clear sky. It was the day of the vow renewal. Instead of squeezing into an uncomfortable dress and sitting at a back table while Chloe's family ignored me, I went into work. We were hosting a private luncheon for a retiring senator, and my expertise was needed to arrange the historical centerpiece. I spent the afternoon surrounded by people who respected my knowledge, who listened when I spoke, and who valued my presence. At 2 o'clock, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Mark's cousin Sarah, who had no idea about the fallout. Hey, Aunt Pat. Missing you today. Can't believe Mark and Chloe moved the party to the local diner down the street. Guess the hotel had a pipe burst or something. See you soon. I read the text and smiled softly. A pipe burst. That was the lie Chloe had invented to explain why her glamorous downtown hotel gala was suddenly downgraded to a neighborhood restaurant that served burgers and fries. They couldn't come up with the money. The caterer had walked. I didn't reply to Sarah. I didn't text Mark to gloat. I simply deleted the message and put my phone away. There was no need to rub it in. The reality of their situation was punishment enough. Chloe had to face her boss and her wealthy friends in a diner, knowing it was entirely her own fault. Mark had to realize that his passive complicity had finally cost him the safety net he had relied on his entire life. I walked back into the dining room of the executive residence, adjusting a silver candlestick on the long mahogany table. I was exactly where I was supposed to be. It has been a month since the vow renewal. The fallout in their social circle was swift. Chloe's boss didn't get a White House tour, and her grand event became a quiet joke among her colleagues. Mark texted me a few weeks later, a cautious, polite message asking if I wanted to grab coffee. I met him at a local cafe. He looked humbled. He apologized, though he placed a little too much blame on Chloe for my taste. I listened, nodded, and paid for my own coffee. I told him I loved him, but that the dynamic of our relationship had permanently changed. There would be no more shared credit cards, no more free storage, and no more disrespect in my own home. He accepted it because he had no other choice. My boundaries were no longer up for negotiation. I still work at the White House. I still enjoy my quiet evenings, my chamomile tea, and the absolute control over my own life. I stopped waiting for my family to assign me a seat at their table, and instead I built my own. I realized that you cannot negotiate respect with people who only value you for what you can provide. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply close your wallet, change your locks, and walk away. I'd love to know what you would have done in my place. Would you have paid for the dinner just to keep the peace? Would you have confronted Chloe's boss? Tell me in the comments below and let me know where you're watching from tonight. We share real stories about family boundaries and taking back control every single day. If this one moved, you hit subscribe so you never miss the next story. Thank you for sitting with me through this one. I'll see you next time.